Thank you so much for having me. Couple of things. So I'm going to talk to you about lean principles today. And one thing I did want to mention is everybody will be receiving a free copy of the book that we just released. I think it's going to be in the goodie bags that you all get on your way out. So depending on when you leave, make sure you get it in there. And if you want to talk to me throughout the day, I will be here. So has everybody seen the show Breaking Bad? Maybe kind of a little bit, if not, phenomenal show. This is a scene from the series where two guys are mesmerized by how much money the Walter White has accumulated. And so what I loved was the picture that Dylan Martin took when they received all the books that you guys are going to receive today. My kids thought this was absolutely hilarious, so I wanted to share it. So what is lean? Lean, when people think of lean, typically it's about manufacturing. It's about Toyota production system. Many of you might have heard of Eric Ries, who took the manufacturing elements of lean and converted it to product development, right? So if you're an engineer or if you're in product, which nobody here is, you've read the Lean Startup, which is all about how to be agile and move quickly, et cetera. So Matt May and I, who've been working together for about 11 years, I met Matt at a public company. And then we worked together at a startup before I joined Insight Partners, started applying lean principles to sales and post-sales teams. And so we've sort of converted the concepts of lean optimization to go-to-market. And so I'm going to share how some of those principles can be applied in go-to-market and why some of the best unicorns in the world have been able to apply the principles to grow in a sustainable and effective way. So let me talk about unicorns. A unicorn, as defined by the managing partner of Cowboy Ventures, Eileen, is any company that is valued at $1 billion or more, right? Typically, it's $1 billion of private companies, not companies that are public. And so here you can see the number of unicorns from 2018. On average, it's been about 163, pretty consistent. We saw obviously in 2021, when money was cheap, a lot of companies were overvalued and reached unicorn status. That number came down in 2022, and you can see this year, given where the markets are, it's coming down to about 21 a quarter. We'll probably end the year a little bit above 100, but it's a very unique club to be in if you think about it. If on average about 160 of your companies might reach that status. Another important stat, less than 2%. This is how many companies will actually get to $100 million in ARR, right? So typical milestones are, your first million, your first 10, maybe you get unicorn status, and then 100 million, right? So it's a very unique place to be. Even more unique is how many companies actually get to be public, right? Which is ultimately the goal of CEOs and founders, to build a company that is sustainable and reaches public status, right? So very, very unique. And so what I'm going to be talking about today is our unicorn model. And so we've tried to build an analogy using the framework SCALE, which are basically 5 principles. So we're going to talk about strategic speed, how some of the companies move as quickly as possible in sales to execute. Always constantly experimenting, right? So if you think about it from a sales perspective, you have a lot of opportunities to test things before you go live, how to accelerate customer value, how to leverage lean process, and then esprit de corps, which I know we're in Belgium, so hopefully esprit de corps translates to most of you, which is really about the spirit of the team, and that's the glue that keeps things together, which is why we have it in the middle. I was in Israel, and I presented this slide, and I said, "Who is this?" And very few people knew this, but I think since we're in Belgium, I think this is very clear who this is. Just won, I think, this past weekend, the Miami F1 race. So I want to prove something out. If I could have this young lady come up on stage real quick in the pink shirt. So I'm going to give you this. Actually, I'm going to put this pen right here. It's not open. You can open, I'm basically just giving her a pen and my notebook. And who has a phone up here? One of you gentlemen can take out your phone, the timer. This guy right here in the gray beige shirt. If you could get your iPhone timer or Android timer. So any blank page, hopefully not one that I was taking notes on. So pen down. When I say start the timer, I just want you to pick up the pen and write your full name and then put the pen down. Okay? So start. And she's done. Time. Hello. How many? 8:34. Thank you so much. You can sit down. So 8 seconds and 34 milliseconds is how long it took her to pick up a pen and write her name down. How fast do you think it takes Verstappen, the fastest pit stop ever recorded in F1, to change 4 tires? Yeah, 1.82 seconds is the record. It took her 8 seconds to write her name. So let's think about the efficiency and effectiveness to have 20 people around a car take 4 tires off and put 4 tires on in 1.82 seconds. Basically 4 times quicker, no offense, than it took her to write her name, right? And so why is that important? Because strategy is about making the right decisions and actually choosing what not to do. Sometimes people think strategy is about the budgeting process and let's figure out this or that. From a sales perspective, you have a lot of options. Do I deploy resources, right? Do I sell every single product that the company is giving me? Do I go into every country or market or vertical that I'm being asked to do? I've got to deploy resources. Do I deploy more account executives, more account managers, BDRs, potentially sales engineers, right? Do I leverage channels, et cetera? Especially in these turbulent times that we have, it is super critical that you choose and are laser focused on your strategy so you can move quickly. If you're trying to do too many things, you're not going to be as fast as 1.82 seconds, and you're not going to be able to compete with your competitors. I want to share an example with Netflix. I think everybody knows Netflix. In the early days, Netflix had huge share in the United States, and they were only in the United States. And somebody had the idea, well, we should go into Canada. Canada's right next door to the US. They also speak English. We can gain 10 more points of growth. Big debate with the leadership team. The leadership team and the CEO ultimately said, no, we're not going to go into Canada. We're going to stay in the US and double down. Why? While it may look simple to go into Canada, there were language barriers. Canadians also speak French. The product was not designed to support that. There were also technical difficulties. So while it seemed simple, let me deploy more resources, more sales teams to capture additional share, they said, no, let's focus on the core and be really good at the US before we expand. Staying in the US resulted in 20 points of growth versus the 10 in Canada. Ultimately, obviously, they did go into Canada. But again, the point being, very tough decision choosing where to play and not to play. And so I'll leave you with a couple of points. Are you laser focused from a sales perspective on where you're going to focus your teams or not focus your teams? Do you have a clear sales strategy? Is your strategy aligned to the company's strategy, right? Because there's other people across the firm, product, marketing, engineering, that may be doing different things. And are you prioritizing and are your teams understanding what needs to be done to be effective? Again, alignment at the strategic level, super critical. I wanted to share this slide that came from McKinsey, which is super critical. So from left to right, and on the top and the bottom, you've got a lot of metrics that your board looks at, your CFO, investors, on what drives enterprise value. Because ultimately, you all as sales leaders are responsible for driving the enterprise value of your firm, right? And so you can see on the right, elements like ARR growth, LTM is last 12 months, NTM, in case you see NTM on top, is next 12 months. But you can see net revenue retention is pretty much tied second or third in terms of things that cause ultimate value, right? Net revenue retention is what you sell that's new and the expansion that you drive with your customers. And so NRR, as we call it, net revenue retention, is super critical, right? Because you want to land with your customers, which is very difficult, but ultimately retaining those customers, having those customers purchase more from you, and also being sources of referrals for new customers is super critical. As we look at the multiples the last couple of years, so you can see the multiples during 2021, early 22 skyrocketed, right? We're now back to normal multiples from the early days of around 5x, which, for all of us that are in startups, we want higher multiples because that's how we all monetize and make significant money. But you can sort of see, multiples have started to stabilize. If we look at the companies that perform the best, again, talking about driving maximum customer value, which I'll talk about in a second, we've got a couple here: Snowflake, Datadog, Atlassian, and Veeva. The first column is the growth rate, and then free cash flow margin. The sum of those gives you, are you rule of 40 or not, right? So rule of 40 is a very common term in investing, in terms of seeing like, are companies growing effectively, et cetera, right? So you're looking at, can you grow, and are you somewhat profitable? And you can see that there's variability here from these four companies, but you can see what rule of they are: 102, 88, 55, 55. And the point here is that the companies that can be above rule of 40, so show very high growth, but also some level of profitability, are able to drive significant premiums off of their valuations, right? So the second to last column is the difference from the median in the valuation compared to all other public companies. You can see here on the right, though, that number is off, obviously, since the markets are down. These numbers were very different a year ago. But again, the point being, the markets value net revenue retention and you being able to sell into customers and post-sell. So what does that have to do with lean, right? So from lean, we talk about accelerating the value that customers get from your solution, right? As soon as I purchase from you, I want it implemented. I want to be getting value so I can purchase more, right? And so ensuring that you have your entire sales process set up effectively, and that you understand your customer. Like, are you really selling value? I love this example on ice. 1800s, ice used to be harvested, right? There were harvesters that would actually go out to lakes, specifically in the Scandinavian countries, and cut ice blocks and deliver them to people's houses. Someone then said, well, that's not very efficient. Why don't we just produce ice in a factory? That's the second picture. So then ice was produced in factories and shipped to people's houses. But let's think about it. Are we really solving the customer's problem, right? You're just delivering ice to their house. Somebody ultimately said, the customer doesn't want ice. They want somewhere to store packaged goods, drinks, food, and keep it cold. And refrigerator companies were created. What's fascinating is that none of the harvesters ever became factories. None of the factories ever became refrigerator companies. It took somebody thinking innovatively, do I understand the company's problem, and building something new. So I always find that fascinating that nobody actually got there. It had to be a new entrant. So a couple of things. How well does your solution help your customer achieve their values? And do you understand that? Are you pitching it effectively, right? Are you capturing win-loss data, especially now, to understand why are we winning? And if we're losing, is it because we're the messaging? Is it because of your teams? Is it because it's a product issue? Is it pricing, so that you can adjust correctly, right? And have you documented the different personas that you're selling to? We were talking about this at dinner last night. Sometimes reps have a tendency to say, hey, I got the pitch from my leader or from marketing, and I'm just going to do the same thing to every person I talk to. Especially when you're doing enterprise sales or very large mega deals, right? The personas are different. Selling to a CFO, especially in today's time, because all CFOs are now getting involved in CEOs, requires a very different approach than what we were doing 6 months, 12 months ago. So needing to adjust, super critical. Let me go to the L, which is all about process. And I love this quote from Toyota, right? When Toyota rolled out the production system, their entire process for lean was to minimize the process from order to cash. And all of us who are in sales know that process can sometimes be cumbersome, right? We have to work with finance. Things are manual. Maybe you have a tool, maybe you don't. There's back and forth with the customer, right? So a lot of opportunity to optimize. The customer only wants to pay for value-added items. But if you look at this, the majority of what we provide customers is actually not value-add, right? There are things that the customer has to pay for that they don't like. There's internal things that we have to do, like ISO compliance or security, regulations that just get baked into the price, right? But I, as a customer, don't care about that. I want value add. So the thing to think about is, how do you minimize the amount of waste that's in the process that you actually can control as a leader, right? In terms of, again, working with your peers, your colleagues, using enablement technology to streamline things. I want to call this out real quick as an example because a lot of times companies think, okay, I've got to streamline. Who does it the best in my industry, right? Or who does it the best in Belgium? And I would argue you should look at who does it the best anywhere in the world. So this is the F1 team again, right? And so these are the 20 people and the team leader that are responsible for making sure that you can get the tires off and on in 1.82 seconds. The average, I think, is about 3 to 4 seconds, but still half of your time, right? Still good. They are the best at this. This is the epitome of effectiveness and efficiency. So much so that hospitals around the world have called F1 teams into emergency rooms. Why? If you look at this, right, you got people all around a car, looks a little bit like an operating table. You've got a doctor, right, anesthesiologist. You've got different tools and stuff. Believe it or not, very inefficient, which is kind of sad because if I go to a hospital, I'm hoping that their process is more efficient and effective, but it's actually not. So they've called the F1 teams in. How did you get so efficient at changing 4 tires? We have people's lives on our tables and we have tools everywhere and people are moving around. And so hospitals are learning from the best of the best to optimize. So as you think about your teams and your processes and how you're driving sales, learn from the best around the world or even in Belgium, but don't focus on just the best in your industry. Figure out who's doing what. From a process perspective, like why is process important? So this is a chart from Winning by Design. I don't know how many of you know Jaco from Winning by Design, phenomenal leader, has built a really strong sales methodology. And so they mapped out on the x-axis how many salespeople are adhering to a methodology. And this is based on 58,000 sales calls last year. And so you can see as sales leaders, right, the more of your teams are adhering to a process, the better the overall performance is of you growing your team. Now, why is that? Well, let's stick to the F1 example. You got 20 people changing a tire. They have standard operating procedures. You stand here, you stand here. Your role here is here. You follow the process every single time. If one person's not doing the process, those tires aren't coming off in 2 seconds, right? And remember, every second you're changing tires, that's waste. Coming off of the track is waste. If we go back to value-added work, right? That's not value-added work for winning a race. The strategy of a race is to be on the track as long as possible to win the race and go as fast as possible. Any second off is complete waste, right? So the reason they spend so much time testing to optimize for time is because they want to minimize the amount of time that they're actually in the pit stop. But we have to be careful. And I know you guys have a lot of pressure. And by the way, this is a very depressed Ferrari team because they can't seem to win. Sorry if you're a Ferrari fan. So this is the part of the pit stop crew, right? A typical race in F1 is anywhere from 90 minutes to 2 hours. Okay, so let's just pretend it's 2 hours. How many seconds do you think this team of 20 people, is less than 20 showing here, but actually spends doing work in 2 hours? It's 11 seconds or less, right? And so if you looked at this and said, you know, you're watching TV and you're like, wow, what a waste. These people are just sitting here, you know, they come out, they change some tires, like, I don't know, maybe we should do some cost reductions. They don't seem effective, right? That's what we're hearing today in the market, right? Like you're getting pressure from your board or your team and we've got to reduce headcount. And of course, there's always time to optimize. But what would happen if you looked at this and said, they're not working, let's streamline, and you took 5 people out? You're sure not going to win the race, right? So be very thoughtful when you're evaluating the efficacy of your sales team, how they're being deployed, what they're doing, because what looks like on the surface is not always what's actually happening underneath. So two things to walk away from. Are you thinking about eliminating waste, especially with Gen AI? So many opportunities right now to remove steps that BDRs or reps are doing, researching, right? A lot of tools are coming out that allow you to research very quickly, save you time, right? Reps don't want to be, that's not value add work for them, right? Necessarily. It's non-value add, it's not waste, but I need to be speaking to a customer and be as intelligible as possible. Can you streamline that? If you have BDRs, right? If you have customer support teams under you or customer success that are responding back to customers, are there tools out there that can summarize some of the issues so that when I come into the office, I open up my screen, I can be more productive, right? Gen AI is going to transform how effective and efficient we can be as teams. And remember, efficiency is not the same as effectiveness. Efficiency is about doing things right. Effectiveness is about doing the right things. You can be very efficient and lose, right? You could be a football team. I won't say, I won't say Belgium or the Netherlands or whatever. Let's pick on the British, right? You could be the British team and lose every game for the entire season. It's very efficient. It's not effective, but you were very efficient at going 0-10, right? So the key is to be effective while also being efficient. And the second is, have you repeated that sales process? Again, like, how good are your reps? If we go back and look at the data from Yako, right? This clearly states that if people follow and adhere to a process, they will be better, they'll perform more effectively, et cetera. And again, streamline. I know we're all in sales. We don't want to follow process, right? We don't want to put stuff in the CRM, et cetera. There's a difference between tactical process that adds no value versus, can your reps talk to the value proposition? Have you trained them how to talk to CFOs? Have you practiced weekly how to handle objections from the CFO or CEO now that they're saying, we don't have budget, maybe we'll buy next year, right? So that adherence to process, super critical. The last one, this is a picture of my grandfather. So I'm originally from Mexico. I was born in Mexico. I know, hard to believe. Grew up in Texas. I moved there when I was 7. And my grandfather got drafted in World War II and actually landed in Normandy on day 2, not day 1, thankfully, and was all around Europe, in France and Germany, was one of the first soldiers to cross the bridge at Remagen in Germany. And the military has a saying, mission first, people always. And there's a reason in our unicorn model that we have esprit de corps as the middle, right? Because that's the glue that brings the organization together. The culture that you all bring is super critical. There's a saying, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And you just heard me talk about the importance of strategy and being super laser focused on what you're not going to do and what you are going to do. I actually don't think strategy or culture eats strategy for breakfast. I think culture and strategy have to eat the same breakfast together, because you could have a phenomenal culture with no vision, no clarity, and people might feel good, but where are you going? You could have very strong strategy and have clarity on where you're going, but no culture and who's going to come work for you, right? So as leaders, super critical, especially you all, to build a very strong sales culture that people want to work for, right? Because ultimately that will drive stronger alignment with the strategy, et cetera. So think about, within your company, do you have a team that people want to work for? Do you have alignment with your senior leadership team to build a strong strategy? So key takeaways. I'm trying to make some time up here since I know we're running a little behind because of the parking. If you walk away with anything today, be laser focused, right? You're going to be getting pulled in a lot of directions from a sales perspective. Got to try PLG, go do channels, go into a new country, deploy more resources this way or that. You cannot do everything right now, especially with the cost pressures and what's going on in the market. You've got to double down on things that work, that will allow you to make you achieve your quota and your team's quota. Second is make sure your teams understand what is the target audience you're going after and what are the personas you're now targeting. Has it changed because of your strategy? We're working with one company where they set a new strategy in Q4 in November. We just changed that strategy last month because there were competitive threats. Again, strategy is not a Q4, let's all get together and do the budgeting, right? There's a very big misconception that strategic planning is the same as strategy. Strategy can change all the time. So again, this company had to pivot. One of their key competitors is now rolling out new products that they were not counting on. So they're making changes to make sure they can stay ahead of the market, right? Happening real time, super critical. Just like an F1, right? It starts to rain on the track. What tires do I use? Do I maintain my old tires? Do I change to wet tires? Wet tires are a lot slower if it stops raining. So pretty big strategic decision to take the car off the track and put different tires on if I don't know if it's going to continue to rain, right? So very similar for you all. We're going into the second half of the year. Are you aligned with what's going to help you and your teams be successful and make as much money as possible the rest of the year? Third, Make sure you understand win-loss reasons or deals pushing out. Like, why are deals pushing out? Sometimes companies don't capture that. They don't go back and talk to the customers. They just look at the data and the CRM, whatever the rep put in. Invest the time to talk to customers who have left you or have made decisions to push off so that you can course correct and change your strategy. And again, drive maximum customer value early, which seems obvious, but hopefully the financial data that I showed you shows that NRR, net revenue retention, is such an important driver of enterprise value, that getting your customers to use your solution as quickly as possible, super critical, obviously, for the success of everyone. I'll leave you with this, one of my favorite quotes from Drucker: "There's nothing so useless as doing efficiently that which should not be done at all." A lot of companies do things that they should not be doing. Sales teams do things that they should not be doing. Reevaluate where your teams are spending time and focus only on the things that drive maximum value. Thank you.